Welcome to Bald Eagle Chronicles. In the Middle East, southern Lebanon has been seriously disrupted ahead of possible Iranian retaliatory strikes against Israel. The IDF says Israeli fighter jets and drones have carried out multiple strikes in southern Lebanon. In Kafr Kila, Yarine, Rachaf, Tiri, and Hula, IDF officials said, a group of operatives, a rocket launcher, buildings and other infrastructure used by Hezbollah were hit. Among the targets hit were Hezbollah's secret hideouts in the aforementioned settlements, its underground command headquarters, and a large number of military munitions. The connection between these targets was provided by Hezbollah's secret underground tunnels. Since 2018, the Israel Defense Forces have managed to deconstruct the structure of Hezbollah tunnels. A military source, who did not want to be named, said that they carried out the operation in a targeted manner and targeted the tunnel infrastructure connecting Hezbollah headquarters. These targets, whose coordinates were known, were completely destroyed after being bombed by Israeli fighter jets. Lebanese media reported on this dramatic Israeli airstrike, emphasizing that Israel had already begun the war. This will make both Hezbollah and Iran extremely nervous. Israeli military officials have stated that the attacks will continue until Iran and pro-Iranian armed elements stop. Hezbollah also claims that it will not give up its attacks. But while the full-scale war has not yet begun, Hezbollah has already suffered significant casualties. The pro-Iranian armed group announced today that one of its members was killed in an Israeli attack. This brings Hezbollah's death toll since October to 401. This will surely give Hezbollah pause for thought before continuing its attacks on Israel. This is not only because Hezbollah has lost more members, but also because, even as the group's leader spoke, Israel continued its attacks, intimidating the pro-Iranian elements. As you may recall, Israeli forces recently decided to disrupt Nasrallah's speech by creating a sound explosion to send a warning message to Nasrallah and Hezbollah commanders. While Nasrallah was broadcasting messages of anger, IDF fighter jets were creating sonic booms in Lebanon. This was a very clear message from Israel to Hezbollah. The message was that Israeli jets can carry out attacks anywhere at any time. Nasrallah referred to this in his speech, suggesting that Israel was trying to break the sound barrier in order to frighten the audience. The IDF recognizes that this is psychological warfare between Hezbollah and Israel. However, Israel has been hitting pro-Iranian targets outside Lebanon, not only with psychological warfare tactics, but also with real strikes. The most recent example of this was in Syria. Syrian media reported explosions near the Shayrat airbase in Homs. Some reports attribute the explosions to an alleged Israeli airstrike. Syrian state media, citing a military statement, reported today that 4 soldiers were wounded in an Israeli airstrike in central Syria. The statement said the strike also caused material damage. Israel has not commented on the alleged attack. Such attacks have seriously demoralized Iran. Despite numerous statements, Tehran has yet to carry out a retaliatory attack. Instead of direct attacks, the Tehran regime continues to deploy Hezbollah. Israel has also increased its security measures in response to Iran's use of the Hezbollah trump card. The Security Cabinet met in Tel Aviv on Thursday night. Israeli media reported that the cabinet met in the underground command room of the Kiryat military headquarters, the first such meeting since the night of April 13th, 14, when Iran launched nearly 300 missiles and drones at Israel. According to local media sources, the meeting was held in the pit, known as the Underground Command Room, but not because of immediate security concerns, but rather to drill for a potential emergency. Israel's assessment on Thursday was that Hezbollah would try to target a senior Israeli official in retaliation for Israel's killing of Commander Fouad Shukr on July 30th following a rocket attack in the Golan Heights that killed 12 non-adults. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant issued an unusual message to the Lebanese people, saying in Arabic that Israel would fight Hezbollah with all its might if the group continued to escalate tensions. The State of Israel wants peace, prosperity, and stability on both sides of its northern border and will not allow Hezbollah militias to destabilize the border and the region. With this in mind, Yoav Gallant confirmed that if Hezbollah continues its aggression, Israel will fight it with all its might. Referring to the Second Lebanon War, a 34-day conflict that erupted when Hezbollah operatives captured 2 Israeli soldiers and killed others, Mr. Gallant brought up Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah's regret over the dangerous and reckless adventure of August 2006. After this reminder, Gallant said that those who play with fire should expect destruction. Haifa Mayor Yona Yahav also referred to the Second Lebanon War on Thursday, telling public broadcaster Khan that Hezbollah's arsenal is much more advanced than it was 18 years ago. According to Yona Yahav, Hezbollah can fire 4,000 missiles against Israel. Following the escalation of the threat factors, the Israeli defense minister again made important assessments and shared information about the general situation in the country. In an assessment at the IDF Homefront Command, Gallant said that Israel is working to provide adequate warning of any expected attack, but advised citizens to continue their lives as usual in the absence of specific instructions. The U.S. side also continues to engage on this issue. Most recently, Israeli military sources reported that the U.S. has warned Iran that its government and economy could suffer a devastating blow if it launches a major attack against Israel, and that the message has been delivered directly to Tehran and through intermediaries. According to an unnamed U.S. official quoted in the report, the U.S. has sent a clear message to Iran that the risk of a major escalation is extremely high if they launch a major retaliatory attack against Israel. The official added that Tehran has been told that if Iran goes down this path, there is a risk of serious consequences for the Iranian economy and the stability of the newly elected government. Control. This warning was not meant to signal a direct U.S. attack on Iran, but rather to warn Iran of the risks of provoking an Israeli military response. Amid rising tensions, the U.S. has increased its military presence in the region. In addition to sending additional fighter jets and Navy warships to the Middle East to counter the threats posed by Iran and its proxies, the U.S. side has made a concerted diplomatic effort to de-escalate tensions. U.S. Central Command announced on Thursday that U.S. Air Force F-22 fighter jets have arrived in its area of responsibility as part of a change in posture for U.S. forces in the region and to address threats posed by Iran and Iranian-backed groups. CENTCOM Chief General Michael Kurilla made his second visit to Israel in less than a week on Thursday, various media outlets reported. While the U.S. efforts are having an impact on Iran, Hezbollah is likely to remain adamant about attacking Israel despite such warnings. Israeli officials are increasingly convinced that Hezbollah, not Iran, will be the first to launch a major attack on Israel in the coming days. Tehran, on the other hand, is reportedly possibly reassessing the threat of a large-scale attack. Citing 2 sources familiar with intelligence on the matter, the officials said Hezbollah appears increasingly prepared to act against Israel, regardless of Iran's reaction to the recent assassinations of the Lebanese group's top military commander, Fawad Shukr, and Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. One of the sources said that Hezbollah was moving faster than Iran in preparing for an attack, which is scheduled to begin in the coming days. According to the U.S. news network, several officials said Iran appeared to be still preparing its retaliatory plans. One U.S. military official was quoted as saying that Tehran has already made some, if not all, of the expected preparations for a large-scale attack on Iran. The second source emphasized that, unlike Iran, Hezbollah could probably launch an attack with little or no warning signs because Lebanon borders Israel. For its part, Israel has conveyed to both Hezbollah and Iran that any harm to Israeli civilians in retaliation for their promised killing of senior leaders would be a red line, leading to a disproportionate response. The report on this issue states that Israel is prepared for possible attempts to attack civilian infrastructure or Israeli-linked targets abroad. But there is currently no intelligence indicating plots against specific locations overseas. In addition to statements from both sides, one group that poses a threat to Israel is the Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen. Most recently, the leader of the Houthis in Yemen said on Thursday that retaliation for Israel's attack on an Iranian-backed rebel-held port last month was inevitable. The remarks heightened regional tensions after Iran vowed retaliation against Israel for last week's assassination of Hezbollah's top military commander, Fuad Shukr, in Beirut, and the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran hours later. In a televised speech, Abdul Malik al-Houthi confirmed that a response to the July 20th Israeli attack targeting fuel storage tanks in the Houthi-controlled port of Hodeidah was inevitable and would come. The rebel chief added that the war with Israel was at its peak. Israeli warplanes struck the port's oil and fuel facilities last month in response to a Houthi drone strike on Tel Aviv that killed one person. In addition to the oil and fuel facilities, the strike targeted 4 large container cranes that Israel says are used to import Iranian weapons into Yemen. A port official estimated that the strike caused a total of about $20 million in damage. The Houthi rebel group claims to be part of Iran's so-called Axis of Resistance, which includes Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and militant groups from Syria and Iraq. Therefore, they say, they will continue the war against Israel. The Houthis say the delayed response by Iran and its proxies is purely tactical, adding that they are aiming for a truly effective response in light of the preemptive defense measures taken by Israel and its American backers. Another factor triggering tensions in the region is Hamas's plans for a possible attack on Israel. Hamas, like the Houthis, is currently planning to harm Israel, possibly following the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. Especially with Yahya Sinwar as the new leader, experts believe that the Hamas faction will adopt a more aggressive stance. The impact of Yahya Sinwar's new leadership on the hostage issue is still being debated. At the moment, the rapid process that led to Sinwar's appointment as Hamas's political bureau chief is not expected to affect the hostage negotiations or their chances of success. However, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Wednesday that the appointment underscores the fact that it is really up to him to decide whether or not to move forward with a ceasefire. According to Blinken, it was Sinwar, not Ismail Haniyeh, who was always the decision-maker, a role that was reassured by his war with Israel and his control over the fate of the hostages. Sinwar was the one who decided to make the big concession in May, when Hamas recognized that its demand for a permanent ceasefire and a complete Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip would only be realized after the first humanitarian phase of the agreement. In doing so, he increased the chances of reaching an agreement. Sinwar's new role as political bureau chief, thus heading Hamas's military and political wings, could affect the dynamics of the negotiations, which are now awaiting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to act. Hamas said in a statement that the decision to appoint Sinwar came after consultations with all members of the Shura Council, the body that determines Hamas's ideology, policies, and strategy. The so-called council consists of around 320 members, divided into 4 sections, of which 25, 50, form a narrow Shura Council, or a kind of internal cabinet. The council is divided by a serious disagreement between those who favor close ties with Iran, such as Ismail Haniyeh and Salah al-Aruri, who have been crossed out, and those who prefer to return to the Arab side, the line taken by former political leader Khalid Mishaal. Sinwar is in the pro-Iranian camp, but unlike Haniyeh and al-Aruri, who maintain close ties with Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, he sees Iran as a source of money and weapons, but not as an ideological partner for Sinwar. Yahya Sinwar apparently informed neither his co-leaders in the movement nor Tehran about his plans to invade Israel. This has angered Iran, which explains why he has avoided playing a direct military role in the Iranian-backed Axis of Resistance. Disagreement within Hamas culminated in the elections for leadership positions in 2021. Sinwar, confident of victory, had to compete in 3 rounds of voting before being declared the winner. Sinwar, who now heads the political bureau in Gaza, moved quickly to remove Haniyeh loyalists from key positions in the organization. It was clear that Khalid Mashal, who spearheaded Hamas's break with Syria and even Iran in 2012, could not return as head of the political bureau, a position he held until 2017. It was also clear that, according to the Hamas constitution, holding leadership elections in the event of the death of their leader would not be realistic during the war. The result was a compromise of sorts in which Mashal would retain his position as head of Hamas's diaspora leadership, and Sinwar would not appoint a deputy head of the political bureau for the time being, a position he held until al-Aruri was assassinated last January. Al-Aruri's position as head of Hamas in the West Bank was temporarily filled by Zahir Jabarin. Under normal circumstances, Sinwar's term is expected to last until 2025, when the organization's regularly scheduled elections will take place. At the moment, however, it seems that the only hope for Hamas and Sinwar is to have candidates to run in the elections. Despite the functional division between Hamas abroad and Hamas at home, and between the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, Sinwar will now coordinate all the group's military and political activities. The technical issue, how Sinwar can do this from the tunnels in Gaza, does not seem to be a major obstacle, and Sinwar has managed to convey his messages and decisions through his interlocutors, notably Khalil al-Hayya, an aide and confidant. In any case, the main issue Sinwar has to deal with is the reality of Gaza. Therefore, we can expect Iran to continue to play Hezbollah rather than the Hamas trump card. Hezbollah already has far more military resources than Hamas. Iran's preference for Hezbollah is also one of the reasons why it exerts intense pressure on Lebanese politics. Hezbollah has been a fixture in the Lebanese government since 1992, when 8 of its members were elected to parliament, and the party has held cabinet posts since 2005. In the last national elections in 2022, Hezbollah retained 13 seats in Lebanon's 128-member parliament, but the party and its allies lost their majority. In the regions that it controls, Hezbollah functions mostly like a government, and neither the military nor the federal authorities are able to challenge its authority. At the same time, as we indicated earlier, Hezbollah continues to keep its military wing operational. As part of the Taif Agreement, which was reached in 1989 and brought an end to the civil war in Lebanon, Hezbollah was the only militia that was permitted to maintain its weapons. This agreement was mediated by Saudi Arabia and Syria. It was projected by the International Institute for Strategic Studies that the militia had approximately 20,000 active fighters and approximately 20,000 reserves in the year 2020. Additionally, the militia possessed a collection of small guns, tanks, drones, and a variety of long-range rockets. On the other hand, in June of 2024, specialists predicted that Hezbollah possessed between 150,000 and 200,000 rockets and missiles of varying targets. There are others who believe that the presence of Hezbollah is in violation of Resolution 1559 of the United Nations Security Council, which was passed in 2004 and demanded that all Lebanese militias disband and disarm. The United Nations force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, which was initially sent in 1978 with the purpose of restoring the authority of the central government, is still present in the nation, and one of its mandates is to convince Hezbollah to renounce its weapons. In the month of October 2019, Hezbollah became the focus of widespread demonstrations. Lebanon had one of the biggest public debt burdens in the world, equal to 150% of its gross domestic product, GDP, as a result of years of weak growth and poor management by the government. A large number of Lebanese civilians, including members of Hezbollah, have expressed their dissatisfaction with the current economic situation and have demanded that the government hand over control to a new leadership that is technocratic. It was not possible to pacify anti-establishment protesters who saw the formation of a government supported by Hezbollah and led by Prime Minister Hassan Diab in January 2020. These protesters interpreted the formation of the government as a victory for the country's dominant elite. During the time that the new government was in power, unemployment, poverty, and debt all surged, and demonstrations lasted for several months. The party was subjected to additional condemnation in August of 2020, when a court that was supported by the United Nations declared Salim Jamil Ayyash, a member of Hezbollah, guilty of the assassination of Rafiq Hariri, the former Prime Minister of Lebanon, in 2005. In absentia proceedings, Ayyash, who was found not guilty, along with 3 other defendants who were still alive, were tried. The location of the 4 individuals has not been disclosed to the general public, and Hezbollah has declined to hand them up to the police or the court. During this time, Hezbollah has discovered a trustworthy friend in Syria, whose military seized a significant portion of Lebanon during the civil war in Lebanon. The Syrian government continued to function in Lebanon as a peacekeeping force until it was expelled during the Cedar Revolution of 2005, which was a popular protest movement against the occupation of Lebanon by foreign forces. In spite of the fact that it was unsuccessful in its efforts to keep Syrian military in Lebanon, Hezbollah has continued to be a faithful friend of the Assad regime ever since. Experts say that in return for Tehran and Hezbollah's support, the Syrian government has facilitated the transfer of arms from Iran to the militias. Hezbollah publicly confirmed its involvement in the Syrian civil war in 2013, sending around 7,000 militants to help Iranian and Russian forces support the Syrian government against largely rebel groups. Hezbollah withdrew most of its fighters in 2019, attributing the decision to the military success of the Assad regime. While analysts say the war in Syria has helped Hezbollah become a stronger military force, some Lebanese complain that the focus on the war has caused the group to neglect its internal tasks. Support for Hezbollah has waned, as the group has sided with the Assad regime. Hezbollah's involvement in the war has also led to more attacks by Israel, which regularly launches airstrikes against Iran-allied forces in Syria. Now, Iran wants to use Hezbollah primarily against Israel to further complicate the Middle East geography. If Hezbollah is successful in its attacks, Iran may be able to mobilize armed elements in Iraq and Syria. We may then witness Tehran using its military power directly against Israel. In short, Iran, as always, likes to use pawns. Thank you for following us.